Hey kiddies, it's Triple Feature Tuesday, and this week we're looking at the Dream Warrior Trilogy. And we've got a Friday the 13th on Friday, which is, if you recall, is only a month after the last Friday the 13th. So I thought I'd switch things up a little bit, cleanse the palate, since you don't want to overdose on Jason. I know, such a thing is just not possible. But we also have another Friday the 13th in November, so this time around I thought we'd look at another slasher, my personal favorite slasher, Freddy Krueger. Freddy was the one that I popped my horror cherry on back when I was 5 years old, and my older friends wanted to watch Nightmare on Elm Street the First on TV, and we did. And then I never watched another horror movie for 8 or 9 years. And, had nightmares for 3 straight months. Yeah, it was a good time. Then, when I was a teenager and I was watching regular TV with commercials and editing, so I knew it couldn't be too terrible, I started getting back into Freddy Krueger, of all people. And I have never looked back since. I just love it. Freddy Krueger is just the epitome of modern evil. I honestly think it's between him and Hannibal Lecter, because Hannibal Lecter is just wrong. He is like everything that there is good in the world. Hannibal is the opposite. And much in the same way, Freddy Krueger is everything that is wrong. Because you have to understand, he was not only a child rapist and murderer that was killed by mob rule, he decided he deserved revenge on the people that killed him, completely justifiably. As in, they were justified in killing him because he raped and murdered their children. But no. When the tables were turned on him, he decided, no, I'm coming back and I'm going to get mine. By killing more of their children in their dreams in the most horrible ways possible. Fred Krueger. We're going to focus on the Dream Warrior Trilogy. This is Nightmare on Elm Street 3, 4, and 5, Dream Warrior, Dream Master, and Dream Child, respectively. Basically is one continuous story. Starting with number 3, we get introduced to a bunch of characters that carry over into 4, and then from 4 into 5, even though some time has passed in between the two movies. It's very centered on them, and they all have the same feel to them because they were all trying to recreate what happened with number 3, which is basically the gold finger of Nightmare on Elm Street series. Nightmare on Elm Street 3, in terms of importance to the series, it's hard to understate it because Nightmare on Elm Street the First was just a hit. It was just, and it deservedly so. It is an incredible movie. It's a great horror movie, but it's actually just a good movie, which just puts it over the edge. And then Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 happened and nobody really liked it. Now, it has developed something of a cult following, of which I am part of the cult, but it is by no means a great film, and it takes there's a lot of caveats to make it enjoyable, even though once you establish them, they really are. See the triple feature I did with the after-school special horror movies. So, the pressure was on for number 3 to reinvigorate the series after only 2 entries, and so they brought Wes Craven back. Wes had the original writer and director of the first Nightmare on Elm Street. He had intended Nightmare on Elm Street to stand on its own. It was just going to be one movie and then move on, but it was so popular they had to do sequels because New Line Cinema needed money. Freddy, New Line Cinema for the longest time referred to itself as the house that Freddy built because it did, or he did, rather. So, they brought in Wes Craven to work on the story, and but I'm pretty sure a lot of the elements that he came up with didn't end up in that movie, but did eventually get used in his later film, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which, God, that movie was so good. But they also brought in Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont. Frank, Darabont from Walking Dead, The Mist, Shawshank Redemption fame, and Chuck Russell to direct it. He would later go on to direct movies like The Mask and Eraser. He had previously worked on Dreamscape, so he was sort of that nightmare bent. And they come up with a lot of great ideas. The dream warrior, the dream power, that the teenagers can have a power to fight against Freddy, no matter how futile that will be, because he's Freddy Krueger. But there was a lot more wonder and hope added to this movie than there had been in the previous two, which made it interesting and continued through 4 and 5. Also very important, the return of Heather Langenkamp as Nancy. After the first movie, we only get like vague references to Nancy in the second movie. That, in the second movie, Mark Patton's character Jesse moves into Nancy's house and he finds her diary, but you don't really know what happens to Nancy, and you find out she started studying dreams. I can't imagine why she'd be interested. She ends up in the mental hospital that services Springwood, Ohio, where she meets what should be the last crop of Elm Street children. Freddy Krueger, his billet, if you will, is to take revenge on the Elm Street families, specifically the ones that burned him, and then basically anybody on Elm Street, because that was the major throughway in the neighborhood, presumably. But there, he's done his job too well. There's only about, 6 left? 6, 7? There's Kirsten, Joey, Kincaid, Tara, Will, actor girl, and the puppet guy. Yeah, I feel bad that I can't remember their names. But anyway, so there's about 7 by my count, if you don't include Nancy, the greatest of all the Elm Street children, because she just is. I will never stop loving Nancy Thompson, played by Heather Langenkamp, because she is the ultimate final girl. Whereas the closest you get to her level of awesomeness is Ellen Ripley in Aliens, where she goes after the Queen to save Newt. But consider Nancy's just a teenager in Ohio, and all of her friends are getting killed, but she decides to take the fight to Freddy. It's like perfect example of will to win in the first movie, where she sets up traps, she goes after him, and she will take him down. She might die with him, but she will go after. She won't just let him come and get her. And now she's back, and she's there to help the new Elm Street children. One of which, Kirsten, is played by a very young Patricia Arquette, and where Patricia Arquette has the greatest scream in all of horror movies. I mean, the register on this woman is insane, and she seems to have just she can just hold it, and it just goes, and it's just shrill and terrible. So the movie sort of ignores part 2 and kind of picks up some unspecified time after the first movie. I would say at least 7 years, considering college and postgraduate work for Nancy, if she was a senior at the time of the first movie. So at least 7, probably more like 10 years between the two films. She is horrified to find out that Freddy is still there. She's been taking dream suppressants, so it's not, it hasn't been her problem for a while. But the minute she knows Freddy's there, she goes right back into it. She's diving in, helping out these kids, because she's awesome. I refer to this as the Goldfinger of Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and it is in that this set up the formula that would be repeated in just about every Nightmare on Elm Street movie afterwards, where Freddy goes after the kids, but takes something specific about their personality. Everybody gets at least one established character trait, and then Freddy uses it against them, / they have some sort of superpower as a result of it. The superpower angle gets played down progressively as 3, 4, and 5 come about, until you get to 6, where it's just a specific character-specific nightmare, but with no actual superpowers. Because, if you had superpowers, you could fight Freddy, and if you could fight Freddy, Freddy can't kill you, and if Freddy can't kill you, how is this a horror movie? And it also introduced a lot of important stuff, like Freddy possessing, killing kids for souls, for power, and the specific motif of the chest of souls, which is revolting. But it's just got a lot of creative, clever gags in it between the marionette death, which was horrifying, the girl being shoved into the TV with Robert Englund's incredible ad-libbed line, "Welcome to prime time, bitch," which, I mean, Freddy really turns into the Crypt Keeper-esque Freddy in this one, whereas in the first two, I mean, in the first one, there's definitely a tricksterish glee that you see in Robert Englund's eyes through the whole thing, but definitely number two, it's completely played down, and he is just a scary, terrifying guy. And now he is much more balanced, having fun while doing terrible, terrible things to people, like shooting up a poor recovering drug addict with drugs until she dies. We still had the great motif in this one of the Freddy's murders being played off as something else. There was always a real life explanation for how these people died that would take the focus off anything supernatural. Like you see Kirsten, she gets her wrist slashed, and when she wakes up, she's holding a razor. The marionette guy jumps off of the bell tower. How he got through all of those locked doors, nobody seems to mention. And I want to say her name's Trish. The actor girl shoved her head into a TV somehow. But then you get back to Joey, who's in a coma because of Freddy, but could be in a coma because of the hypnosil. And so it works out. We got really good actors in this one. Larry Fishburne as the orderly with a heart of gold, Max, Craig Wasson as the well-meaning Neil, John Saxon returning as the completely defeated, useless Donald Thompson. No longer a police officer, if you've noticed. He has something that looks like a police officer's uniform, but if you look closely, he's actually a security guard now, presumably for the dump, or for the auto salvo place that he buried Freddy. Priscilla Pointer is in there. She is always wonderful as Amy Irving's mother, and was in Carrie. I mean, she's got some good horror movie pedigree. And then there are the cameos by Dick Cavett and Zsa Zsa Gabor, the actress girl who I should have looked up at this point, but, we're just going to keep calling her this. She's watching television, late night television, trying to stay up, and she ends up on some bizarre dream version of the Dick Cavett Show. And if you haven't watched the Dick Cavett Show, you should. Cavett owns it and puts it on YouTube, and they're really, really fascinating. Cavett is an interesting guy, rather. And in this nightmare version of the Dick Cavett Show, he is interviewing Zsa Zsa Gabor before Dick Cavett turns into Freddy Krueger and murders Zsa Zsa Gabor. Now, the funny thing about this is that they approached Dick Cavett about doing the cameo, and he was totally on board with it with one condition. He got to pick the guest. He wanted to interview Zsa Zsa Gabor for this nightmare version of the Dick Cavett Show. Why? Because he said it was someone he would never, ever want to interview in real life. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. Are you feeling tongue-tied, Joey? The giant Freddy snake. I mean, it is a balls-to-the-wall special effects extravaganza. Angelo Badalamenti's music is wonderful and just creepy and synthesizer-y. You get a really great send-up of Ray Harryhausen with the Freddy skeleton. I mean, this movie just seems to have everything. And it's one of the only two with full-on actual nudity. It's one of the quirks about A Nightmare on Elm Street is it was never really a naked type of horror movie as compared to Friday the 13th. Which is just wall-to-wall boobs. Coincidentally, both big nudity scenes in the Nightmare on Elm Street series before Freddy vs. Jason, where, of course, the Jason adds a lot of boobs, but that's neither here nor there. The two scenes involve Joey, the tongue-tied scene in this one, and the waterbed scene in number 4, which I should get to because it's already been about 15 minutes. So there are going to be spoilers for these movies, but they're over 20 years old, so it's sort of on you at this point. Nancy unfortunately dies in part 3, Dream Warriors, and so in part 4, it's our 3 remaining Dream Warriors: Kirsten Parker, Kincaid, and Joey. Kirsten is now played by Tuesday Night, and that's actually her real name. Patricia Arquette. I forget if she wanted more money or just didn't want to be involved in a sequel, but either way, she's not there. Tuesday Night takes over and sings our opening theme song, Running from This Nightmare, that plays during the chalk. Forgot to mention, recurring motif during the credit sequences of all 3 movies, we get arts and crafts of our main characters making something. And in the first one, it's the Patricia Arquette making the paper mache Elm Street house. In this one, it's chalk drawings of Freddy Krueger and the Elm Street house. And as it turns out, Freddy is not nearly as dead as they thought. Credit where credit's due to Neil and Donald Thompson in part 3. They did bury the bones, but if they had just consulted their Winchester guide to destroying demons, they forgot to salt and or burn them. Holy water, I mean, you think that's going to be enough to take down Freddy? Who are you? What is this holy water that you think is going to be enough? Salt, fire, bury. This is how we get rid of a ghost. So Freddy's not nearly as dead as they think, and Freddy's coming back, and Kirsten, while she has her 2, I will be friends with you forever for going through the trauma, has a whole bunch of new friends, because, that's just how these things go. And each one of them has a unique identifying character trait that will be used against them later. Kirsten, Freddy comes back and kills Joey and Kincaid in short order. You can't not mention that Freddy comes back when Kincaid's dog, named Jason, pisses fire into the auto salvo yard, and somehow this opens up the earth and brings back Freddy Krueger. Now here's the thing. Renny Harlin directed this movie and came up with a lot of the gags. Renny Harlin is the action genius behind Cliffhanger, Die Hard 2, Die Harder, and many other movies that we know and love. And so he just comes up with this crazy stuff, like dogs pissing fire. It's just wonderful. And then Freddy kills him. And then Freddy kills Joey in a waterbed. He has a hot naked chick pop up in Joey's waterbed, and then basically pops out of the waterbed himself and kills Joey, because Joey had a waterbed. Joey, you were such a douchebag with your goofy little tear. And then it's down to Kirsten. And what's interesting is that the movie pulls a psycho, in that Kirsten is our main character. She's our returning heroine. But she dies about a half hour into the movie. And then all the focus is transferred to the shy wallflower, Alice, played by the wonderful Lisa Wilcox. And as all of her friends die, she starts absorbing their dream powers, which is an interesting take on it. And, the metaphor is snazzy in and of itself, in that, you take things, you should share traits with your friends. You learn from them, and you take things from them, and that makes you a stronger person. That's the point of interacting with people and having friends and stuff. Unfortunately, Freddy's killing all of her friends inadvertently because of her. Kirsten's dream power, or one of her, she had 2 dream powers. She had gymnastics and the ability to bring other people into the dream. Freddy perverted this power, and now whenever Alice daydreams or falls asleep, somebody else falls asleep with her, and then Freddy kills them. In, fairly quick order, he kills Sheila by activating her asthma. She kills her brother Rick by using just invisible ninja stuff, which, well, it's just not that impressive a sequence. But it turns out we were saving that for Debbie. Now, Debbie had 2 traits about her that we knew about. 1, she liked to bodybuild. 2, she hated bugs. So Freddy ends up doing the worst thing I've ever seen Freddy do to anybody. Well, actually, this is like the worst thing we can confirm. It's in the running. There is a debate on the worst thing Freddy ever does, and I think it's between 2 things. 1, what he does to Debbie, which I'll get to in a second, into what he does to Johnny Depp in the first one. Johnny Depp's movie premiere, he gets sucked into the bed, and then a geyser of blood comes out from the hole. Now, I say it's a debate because we don't know what he does to Johnny Depp. We just know that at the end of it, Johnny Depp is liquefied. But it happens off screen, so it's not, you just don't know, and you just don't know if it's going to be that scary. What he does to Debbie is extraordinary, because Debbie, she just wasn't that important a character. She was basically cannon fodder. It was weird that she lasted as long as she did, because she never really had that much of a connection to Alice. She was part of the group of friends. She works where Alice works, but you never get the impression that they're really buddy-buddy. In the dream, Debbie was bodybuilding, and then Freddy gets into like a game of Mercy with a barbell with her, and ends up first breaking her arms at the elbow, which, that's just terrible. I mean, I have, the joints always creep me out. But that's only the start of it. I mean, how is that only the start? Out from, like, the broken elbows emerge two gigantic cockroach arms, which have been immortalized in what I believe is to date the only action figure of a victim in a horror movie, in this poor Debbie action figure here. Look at this. Cockroach. It's terrible. And she's wandering around this nightmarish maze with these gangly cockroach arms until she steps into something sticky, falls over, and she falls flat on her face, and when she's trying to pull herself out from under it, all of her skin rips off to reveal that she has been transformed into a cockroach. And she is, in fact, in a roach motel being held by Freddy, and then Freddy crushes it. Why? Why did any of this? Fred, Jesus Christ, what did she ever do to you? And it was just so much. And how does that get explained in real life? Because they were still doing the explanations of, there was always a real explanation for how the person died that, would not be Freddy. And she turned into a cockroach and was crushed. What happened? And we never find out. Because then it goes to the final sequence where Alice, having all of the dream powers, takes on Freddy. And the fight is actually pretty good, and leads into a more disgusting thing of when Alice defeats Freddy, all of the souls physically pull their way out of Freddy's body. And if you've ever seen how they achieved this effect, they basically built a 10-foot tall replica of Freddy's chest and had real people just kind of writhing around in it. One of which was Linnea Quigley, because they needed somebody that was willing to be topless, and Linnea is always game. But so, evil was defeated, and and it turned out Freddy was the Dream Master or some nonsense. It was kind of phoned in, the sort of explanation and or the way to kill Freddy this time. It's like, evil will see itself and it shall die. No idea what the hell that even means. Mainly because in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Freddy was surrounded by mirrors and somehow didn't spontaneously explode. So, no one ever said it was the most intellectual series. Now, the only problem with this triple feature is that we end on 5, and 5 is technically the worst movie of the entire series. Not including the remake, which stunk. The weird thing, I was going back through the triple features just to make sure I'm not doubling up too much, and I was surprised to find that I've included the remake more times than any other movie in this series, in the Nightmare on Elm Street series. So, if for no other reason, that was why I had to do this one. So, Alice and Dan, our survivors from number 4, are graduating with their new friends Mark, Greta, and Yvonne. In the beginning, during the credit sequence, the arts and crafts this time around are making a baby, where instead of a papier-mâché house or a chalk drawing, Alice and Dan are having sex, and they are making the titular dream child. We get a lot of interesting stuff with finding out more things about Freddy, the exact nature of Freddy's origin, and the horribleness that Amanda Kruger went through. But by and large, this movie is not that interesting. Mainly because we have so few characters that are actually involved. We only have 3 actual deaths, just even though we have like several attempts. Freddy is just weak and struggling to stay alive in this one, and it reflects in just the quality of the film. Now, while there aren't that many deaths, an argument could be made for quality over quantity, because each one of them is really, really bizarre and really, really terrible. There was a marked effort by director Stephen Hopkins of Predator 2 and Lost in Space fame to make Freddy scarier again. And while Freddy himself is not that scary in the movie, the things he's doing to people are. You get a car accident to kill Dan, but leading up to that car accident, there's a whole sequence where he's merging with his bike a la David Cronenberg's Videodrome, just violently merging with a mechanical device, and it looks painful as hell. And visually, it's just fascinating. An interesting thing, a lot of this movie was cut. A lot of the gore and more graphic images were cut out of this film and have yet to actually be released officially in America by New Line. I believe the Australian versions of the movie have the uncut versions, which are much more graphic and terrible. So that's something worth tracking down. So Dan turns into a motorcycle and then crashes into a truck. Greta, our implied bulimic supermodel, is treated like a baby by Freddy and force-fed stuff. And in the uncut, and it's really just gross in and of itself, but in the uncut version, it is explained that Freddy is actually feeding her own entrails to her. He removes the high chair table, and he's just been scooping her out and feeding her to herself, which is horrible. Then you get the most personal for me death of Mark, where he is put into a comic book and then killed by his favorite superhero, and that one hit a little home. What was interesting is that sequence in Mark's dream is not actually filmed in black and white. It is filmed in color, and they just painted, or they had everything be black, white, and gray to achieve the effect. And then Super Freddy happened. A gigantic supervillain version of Freddy. And then we rehash some sequences from Labyrinth, and then the movie ends. And it like I said, it's just not that great. But England, for the little he gets to do, is good. Lisa Wilcox has a lot of strength as Alice dealing with, dead boyfriend, unplanned pregnancy, Dan's parents trying to steal the baby. There are a lot of teen issues being dealt with in the movie, albeit through the horror movie lens. But all in all, it's just, while creative, it's just not that great a movie, and it sort of tanked the series again, leading to Part 6, Freddy's Dead. But it's an interesting sequence of movies. 3, 4, and 5, Dream Warriors, Dream Master, and Dream Child, and it forms the real meat of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, so we just love it because I love Nightmare on Elm Street. And so that's what I'm going to be doing with my Friday the 13th, cleansing the palate a little bit and giving Jason a rest. Jason will be back in November, so don't worry. Jason's not done at all. And then next week I have to watch Sandra Bullock movies, so hooray! But in the meantime, Freddy! Awesome. Have a good Friday the 13th.